The Chinese subcompact crossover segment is filled with a lot of vehicles. You got so much options in that. You have the Geely Coolray, you have the MGs, you have the Cherries, and you also have the GACs. But there's a common denominator between all of them. They are only ICE vehicles, but what if you want a car from that segment, but you need a hybrid for extra fuel economy as well as coding exemption? Well, this car might be the car for you. This is the 2024 GWM Haval Jolion HEV DHT Supreme. Let's take a look at how good this car is and whether or not it is worth your money. Let's talk about the exterior first of the Haval Jolion. And right off the bat, I am liking this pretty big grille with lots of chrome on it. However, what I'm not a big fan of is the color scheme that they have here. So take a look at your center badging. It says Haval, okay, that's fine, but it has a cyan background. And in itself, that would be okay. However, once you take a look at your headlights, which are LEDs by the way, and look pretty good as it is, the lighting assembly inside, it has a blue outline on it, which is a different shade from that cyan by the center badging. So it's not looking too coherent. I'm not sure if it's just too much going on right here, or is it because this car is in red and it doesn't really match it properly. But yeah, not really a big fan of that. However, GWM did give you something to kind of counteract that, and it's by giving you these nice large triangular turn signals by the bottom. Now let's move on towards the side of the vehicle. It gets a little bit better right here. So nice center line by your doors, but you also have a nice sloping roof line. So the curvature here, it looks pretty good. However, now if you take a look at another badging thing they have here, this HEV badge, there's yet another blue outline. And yes, I know blue is supposedly the hybrid version and all that, but the blue they have there is of a different shade from the blue on your lights as well as on your badge. So really, it's not looking too coherent over here, but yeah. Now, your rims, 18 inches, looks of it is just about okay. Now, let's take a look at the size of this vehicle. This is one of its strong points because this is probably one of the biggest cars in its class. This is even slightly bigger compared to the Toyota Corolla Cross. Moving towards the rear of the Haval Jolion, and I gotta say, I do kind of like the look of it, with one exception which I'll get to later. Now, just like the front, you do have these pretty large turn signals. So this entire vertical piece right here, those are turn signals. On top is a very subtle spoiler. You don't get any fake exhaust, but you do get some faux vents over there. Now, the only part I'm not a big fan of here would be the massive Haval lettering. This looked pretty good in the Haval H6, but for the Jolion, given its size, I find it a little bit too big. What isn't too big though is the space you have inside once you open up this tailgate. And as you can see, it's not exactly the largest. In fact, probably space-wise, this is comparable to the likes of the Toyota Vios or the Mitsubishi Mirage. There simply isn't that much space in here. And that's probably because of all your hybrid systems and how you have your regular 12-volt battery in here. And you don't even get a spare tire. You only get a tire repair kit. But there is a bonus for this car, and every Haval Jolion comes with a free small fire extinguisher. While the exterior looks questionable in some aspects of it, the powertrain surely isn't, because what you have here is the most powerful powertrain in its class. This is a 1.5 liter naturally aspirated gasoline engine mated to an electric motor, which gives you a combined output of 186 horsepower and 375 newton meters of torque, which really does make this, again, the most powerful car in its class. And that's very surprising. Yes, I know that this is a little bit larger compared to most of the cars in its class, but I didn't expect this much power to be crammed in a car this small, yet GWM was able to do it. Now, for your transmission, you have a dedicated hybrid transmission. So what are the fuel economy figures? Well, stay tuned for the driving segment for that. Now we're inside the Haval Jolion, and first we check the door stud. Pretty good, not bad overall. Now, inside here, all I can say is when it comes to fit and finish, the fit is good, but the finish not so. So what do I mean by that? When you touch any part of this car, you know the materials that they use for it, it's not the best quality. So, yep, that's plasticky. This is very plasticky, and even this center area, that's very plasticky. However, the way they are put together, in between each other, that is pretty good. So there's not much creaking. The panel gaps on it, they're all uniform. So yeah, fit, good, finish, not so. Now, the steering wheel too, it looks good, it feels good, but the issue I have with it is this is probably one of the few cars in its class wherein you can't telescope it, so it only tilts. So it's pretty hard for me to find my perfect driving position. I find myself having to like kind of slouch in a little bit just to reach it. And so yeah, there's that. Now for your screens, they're pretty good looking. So you have a 12.3-inch digital instrument cluster and you have a 7-inch touchscreen by the middle, which comes with a reverse camera as well as Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. The problem with these two screens are they're both pretty hard to navigate, so it really takes a lot of getting used to be able to easily dig into the menus and configure whatever settings you want. Now the rest of the car, well, there is a wireless charging pad, there is this pretty nice looking rotary shifter by the center, you have an electronic parking brake, you have auto hold, and you even get a slightly tiny panoramic sunroof by the top. Now moving on to the thing that I really do like are the seats, because the ergonomics on it pretty good, the bolsters not too aggressive, and it's also power adjustable for the driver side, but unfortunately only manually adjustable for the passenger side. And for safety, you get advanced driver assistance systems in here, you get adaptive cruise control, autonomous emergency braking, lane keeping assist, and all that. Plus, you even do get 6 airbags. One thing I forgot to mention is if you take a look at this cubby right here, you might think that it's just a place to put things. No, that is where your heads-up display projects from. So yes, this car, despite its price point, comes with a heads-up display, and you can even configure the look of it. Now for the second row of seats, we check the door too. That actually sounds pretty damn solid. Now back here, the seats, number one, they're pretty good. I like the thigh support. The recline of it too, it's already pre-reclined in a pretty comfortable position, so that's another excellent thing. Legroom is great. Headroom is about okay if you're a little bit on the tall side, maybe 6 foot tall. Not the best, but for, you know, fun size people like us, this is pretty good. I also really like how you have this pretty large quarter windows. It really does add in a little bit more light in here. Plus the fact that your panoramic sunroof does reach the rear area. Now for your toys, there truly isn't much. You just get 2 air vents over here. You get the 2 USB-A ports, and you also get 2 map pockets, both on each side. Now let's try seating a third person in here, and I think it's doable. The car isn't the widest, but for shorter trips, this should be fine because you do have a completely flat floor. So now we drive the GWM Haval Jolion Heavy HC Supreme. Now let's start with the things I really like about this car, and that would be the powertrain. It's pretty quick given that you don't really have a conventional transmission, you don't have a turbocharger, and you also get that electric motor, so everything just comes instantly. Power is always instant. So right now I'm going around 30 and I just mash the throttle down and you hear some of that electric sound, and yeah, it just goes. It is pretty fun to drive. Next would be the steering. It is pretty light inside the city, and even if you go on the highway, it does tighten up a lot, so it gives you a lot of reassurance. And now for comfort's also pretty good. You do know that this car is definitely tuned to be a very comfortable car. The suspension, it is pretty soft, so no matter in which road you are in, even if you're traversing EDSA, all those potholes there, you don't really feel much of it in here. Now also, what I like about this car is the fuel economy, because since it is a hybrid, it is pretty efficient. Inside the city, you're doing around 11 kilometers per liter. Definitely not bad for its size. And on the highway, you're doing around 16.6 kilometers per liter. Yes, I do have to admit, in hybrid car standards of this class, that's not the best out there, but yeah, if you compare it to its ICE counterparts, it's definitely a huge step up. For things I'm not a big fan of in here, and number one, that would be the suspension too, because since I mentioned that it's a little bit on the soft side, it doesn't like any sort of lateral movement in here. So for example, you're going over a fast bend or corner, you will feel a lot of roll, and it doesn't really give you the most pleasant of feelings, especially here in your stomach. And also, the issue with this is just how noisy it is when it comes to like road noise. Wind noise honestly isn't too bad, but it just is that road noise, the tire noise is what I mean. And also, if some of those motorcycles and UV Expresses with God who knows what type of exhaust system they have passes anywhere near you, you really do hear everything. So with that makes me wonder, did they put pretty thick noise insulation by your A-pillars. That way you don't hear too much of the wind noise coming from your wing mirrors, for example, but you get a lot of it from this side of the door, meaning they have pretty thin noise insulation by the pillar. I really don't know. Also, there is this single pedal driving function in here, and it's not really the most convenient to use. I mean, we get this in a lot of electric vehicles and a lot of hybrids, and usually in electric vehicles they're the most reliable, but for hybrids, yeah, they kind of work. This one is a little bit on the lower end of the spectrum. I don't really want to rely on it too much, because even if you set this to the highest regenerative braking mode, it still doesn't slow you down enough. So you do find yourself stepping on the brake pedal still, even if you have this single pedal function mode turned on. Finally, another thing I'm not a big fan of would be any sort of lateral advanced driver assistance system function in here. So for example, when you're going on the highway and you want to change lanes, so you turn on your signal lights, right? So you're clearly indicating to the car that you want to change lanes. But if there is any sort of blind spot attention warning to you, it will fight you to stay in your lanes. I get that for utmost safety, that is good, but given how small our lanes are in the Philippines, that's a little bit too impractical. It's like you're gonna find yourself not changing lanes ever if you keep that system turned on. So we've seen how the GWM Haval Jolion drives, you've seen the equipment it has, and now let's talk about its pricing. This car right here, this exact trim, costs 1,588,000 pesos, and I think that GWM needs to put a little bit more extra features and materials in it to make it truly worth its price tag. However, if you're truly looking for the most powerful car in its class, as well as a hybrid that is, again, fuel efficient and coding exempt, then the GWM Haval Jolion in this HEV DHE Supreme trim may be a good alternative for you.